You ever have a morning where everything just breaks? I mean, the kind that splits your whole life into a before and after so sharp you feel in your bones, even years later? That was me, right there on my porch, mug of coffee in hand, ready for another slow sunrise over my land, thinking nothing could surprise me anymore. Shows what I know, because that morning, the world was just too quiet, and I should have known trouble was coming right then. No hum from my wind turbine, nothing but this heavy, hollow silence that crawled right up my spine, made me set my cup down slower than usual, like if I moved too fast, something worse might happen. Boots wet with dew, I started across my yard, air still cold from the Pacific night, breath clouding in front of me. You ever get that tightness where your body's ahead of your mind, and you just know before you know? Yeah, that's what I had. I made it to the fence line and looked out over the little dip in the field where the wind turbine always stood, except now it was lying in a twisted, broken heap. I just stood there, stomach turning, looking at all that metal and memory, blades bent and tower, snapped like some giant had a grudge against me personally. My dad and I built that thing. My dad, gone now, but his fingerprints were all over that project. Losing it felt like losing a part of him all over again. I walked up and knelt beside it, running my hand along the sharp edges, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't weather, wasn't a freak wind, wasn't anything but sabotage, clean cuts, heavy tools. Somebody did this on purpose. Then I saw it, staked right in my own soil, a bright laminated HOA notice like a slap in the face. Unauthorized structure, removed per compliance order. Like tearing out history is just tidying up the place. My chest got hot. My hands started shaking. My land, my power, my past, ripped out without a word. And I knew exactly whose fingerprints were on it. Margaret Collins. Late 50s, pearls and pastels. Always looking like she's going to a garden party, even in the California heat. President of the HOA, self-appointed queen of the block. The kind of person who thinks the world should match her Pinterest board, or else she'll just rearrange it until it does. She'd been on my case since she moved in. Complaints about how my house disrupted the visual harmony, notes about aesthetic values. She even fined me once for truck tire dust near a shared line. I wish I was joking, but this, destroying my wind turbine, this was a declaration of war. I picked up the notice, folded it into my pocket, and looked out at the ocean. The water was calm, endless, rolling out like it didn't care about any of this. Then I looked back at the subdivision, all fake fountains and identical lawns, as if they could tame the wildness out here. They thought that fountain was theirs forever. Never mind that the water running through it came from my stream, the one my family had managed for generations. I whispered, "You picked the wrong guy, Margaret," and went inside. I didn't slam the door. My kind of anger doesn't yell. It just sits cold and sharp, waiting for its chance. First thing I did was dig out the old file box my dad kept, marked water plus land records. He was always meticulous with paperwork. Thank God for that. In that box were county records, hand-drawn maps, deeds, proof that I owned the water rights to the stream feeding their precious fountain. The same fountain the HOA bragged about in every newsletter like it was the centerpiece of Rome. They destroyed the one thing I needed to power my place? Fine. But if you take something from me, I'm taking something from you. I wasn't going to sneak around at night or smash anything. I fight clean, legal, quiet, thorough. That afternoon, I drove into town, stopped at the coffee shop where old ranchers still run their mouths about everything under the sun. They knew from my face something was wrong before I said a word. "What's up?" one of them asked. I told them, and you could see the anger rise. One old guy slapped the counter and said, "You make sure they never forget whose water that is." That was all I needed. By sunset, I was back home, paperwork spread out like a battle plan on the porch. I traced that water line from my land through the channel Dad dug, straight to the HOA's fountain, every inch legally mine. The feeling wasn't pride, exactly. It was more like getting my backbone back. Then headlights rolled up. Margaret, clipboard in hand, sitting in her car, didn't even get out. "We'll be invoicing you for the removal. You should thank us." It was bringing down property values. I just looked at her, calm as glass. "You just made the biggest mistake of your HOA career." She laughed, a cold little sound, and drove off. The next morning, I was up before dawn. Air biting cold, but I stood on the porch and let it sink in, the loss, the anger, and now the plan. I finished my coffee slow, put on my gloves, and headed for the county office. Not the HOA clubhouse. No, the real place, where authority lives in yellowed paper and signatures. Mrs. Woods was at the desk, been there forever, smiled like she already knew half my story. "Looking for water rights records?" she asked. I nodded. "HOA trouble?" she guessed. I didn't have to say a word. She led me to the files, and right there in my dad's neat handwriting were the original county rights, unrestricted by future development or shared claims. In other words, I could shut off that fountain today if I wanted. But I didn't want revenge, I wanted respect. On my way back, I passed the HOA's dolphin fountain, Margaret barking at a landscaper, the whole scene looking even more out of place than usual. Back home, I called my buddy Hank. He showed up, grease still on his hands from fixing a tractor, grinning. "Heard Margaret's chewing gravel over there," he laughed. We walked the land together, mapped out how I'd reroute the water back into my pond. "Put a gate here, slow and low," Hank said. "On paper, you're just improving your property. In reality, their fountain's gonna choke." "Legal?" I asked. "Church shoes on Sunday legal," he shot back. We shook on it, old school, solid, nothing left unsaid. We spent days trenching, hauling, sweating, getting blisters. Felt good, every minute of it. Every spadeful was a message. You don't get to stomp all over folks just because you've got a clipboard. Day 3, Margaret showed up again, rolled down her window, voice all sharp and brittle. "What are you doing?" she snapped. "Property maintenance," I said, barely looking up. "Thought you'd appreciate it." She started ranting about retaliation, but I just shrugged. "You'll know if I retaliate. Right now I'm just working." She didn't like that. Drove off in a spray of gravel, looking like someone had finally told her no for the first time in her life. 2 days later, we turned the new gate. Water slid into my pond. The HOA's fountain started coughing dry. That night, I sat on the porch, listened to the trickle, and thought of my dad. Margaret thought power lived in meetings and bylaws. She didn't know it lives in roots, in earth, in the kind of stubbornness you can't write into policy. By morning, the HOA's pool was dropping, the grass was wilting, and the whole place looked a little less smug. Over the next few days, word spread. People saw the fountain sputtering. Margaret yelled, but the land had already shifted. That afternoon, Susan, a board member with a conscience, came to my gate. She looked tired, honest. "The board wants to talk. This can't turn into a war." I told her straight. Margaret started it when she trespassed and tore down something that meant the world to me. Susan nodded, asked if I'd meet with them. I agreed. That night, I sat with a glass of whiskey, watching the sky, thinking about how justice is more about standing firm than shouting. At the meeting, I didn't sit down. I stood my ground, told them the truth. The board agreed to remove Margaret as president and pay to rebuild my wind turbine, full cost. I said I'd accept if Margaret apologized herself to me and everyone. They hesitated, but Susan promised. Later, Margaret came to my fence, voice small. "I was wrong. I'm sorry. I let authority make me arrogant." I told her to say it in front of everyone. She nodded, finally understanding. Sometimes the hardest victories are the quiet ones, when someone actually learns. 2 days later, town hall was packed. Margaret stood up front. No pearls, no armor, just a paper in her shaking hands. She admitted she destroyed property, trespassed, let her power go to her head. There was no applause, just a heavy silence, like the land itself was listening. The board dismissed her. Folks came up afterward, shook my hand, thanked me for standing up. Out in the lot, a rancher just nodded. That said more than any speech. When I got home, the new windmill was going up, bigger, stronger, spinning easy in a breeze. Hank dropped by, and we sat there, watching it turn. "Not every fight ends with somebody learning," he said. "Some folks just get meaner." I shrugged. Not my job to fix him, just to protect what's mine. Days passed. The HOA pool filled again, quieter this time, like it knew not to get cocky. Margaret kept her distance. Once, she stopped by the fence, said quietly, "Power makes fools fast." I nodded. "Land keeps you honest." She smiled just a little and walked off. Peace isn't always a handshake. Sometimes it's just knowing the boundaries are back where they belong. That night, as the windmill hummed and the crickets sang, I thought, justice isn't loud. It's a full pond, a working gate, and a quiet you can feel in your bones. It's knowing you held your ground when it mattered most. So, if you're listening and you've ever had to remind somebody that respect isn't optional, if you've had to stand your ground, drop your story in the comments. Like, subscribe, stick around. Because folks like us, we don't walk away from what's ours. We hold it. We work it. And when someone tries to take it, we lean in harder. See you next time. And may your fences be strong, your river honest, and your peace deeper than pride.